So, okay, tonight we're going to have a new topic, which is, let me see, hang on a second. Let me just make sure that we are sharing the screen. Let me share the screen. Okay, presentation. Okay. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about security and privacy. I can pick a topic, or I can present a more theoretical framework about security, but I thought I'm going to give you a more direct and more kind of example of what's going on these days. Okay. With that, hopefully you'll understand more about security and privacy. So let's start by looking at what we have now in Indonesia. This is a statistics by Asosiasi Penyelenggara Jasa Internet Indonesia, ABJI. ABJI regularly creates a statistic about internet in Indonesia. And I think this is from 2018. I thought they have one that is in 2020, but I went to their website this morning, but I couldn't find it. So anyway, this is still valid. From this slide, you can see that there are about 171 million Indonesians on the internet. So that's roughly about 64% of Indonesian populations. The definition of internet user is sometimes a bit misleading and sometimes confusing, because if you talk to people and you ask them, "Are you on the internet?" and they might say, "No, I'm not on the internet, but I'm on Instagram, or I'm on TikTok, or I'm on Twitter or Facebook even." So they're on the internet because their definition, basically our definition, if they are using social media and you're using operator as a media to connect to the internet, to access the media social, then you are actually an internet user. Okay. So if you look at the size of this internet user in Indonesia, the size is huge. 171 million of 171 millions in Indonesia. If you can imagine the population of Singapore, probably only 5 million. Okay, the population of Malaysia is probably around 25 millions. So you can see that we have a huge population on the internet or netizen. If you can imagine that this number of people, there has to be problems, security problems, frauds, and things like that. And that what makes it different. If you look at the state of security in Indonesia and compare it to other countries regionally or even in the world, it's going to be the same. Okay. So if you look at say probably Malaysia or Philippines, the percentage of say hacking fraud is going to be the same, but because the percentage is multiplied by the number of users, then even 1% for Indonesia is still big, right? So what makes it different is the scale of the problem. The scale of a problem in Indonesia is huge. Now, on top of that, in Indonesia, we are one of the countries, regional wise at least, that is very early in adopting IT applications. So in Indonesia, we can see many innovations. Say, for example, if you look at Gojek, for example, Gojek, it's one of the I think it's one of the biggest unicorn in Indonesia. It has become part of our life, kind of. If you want to go something, you say di Gojekin aja gitu. So it's if you have something like a company that becomes a verb, then that means the company is actually part of our life, right? Di Gojekin aja, so it's part of our life. Now, other application include also fintech or financial technology, If you use Gojek, then usually use GoPay. If you use Grab, usually use OVO. And there are other also fintech implementation, Dana, Genius, and so on and so forth. In the e-commerce front, if you use Tokopedia, Shopee, Bukalapak, Blibli, and so on and so forth. At my house, every day there's a package coming to our house. Packet, either from Shopee or from Tokopedia, because it's becoming our lifestyle. In terms of traveling, we have Traveloka, Ticket.com, right, and other smaller e-commerce communication. Then definitely you have WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, WeChat, and other stuff. So these are common applications that we use. Media social, you're familiar with Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and recently TikTok. And there are other applications. I've just put here in IoT, Bandung Weather Network, bee monitoring, and so on and so forth. So basically, we embrace technology, or we embrace IT in Indonesia. It has become part of our life. Because of the scale is big, and we use IT in our daily lives, then if there's a problem in this implementation, then that's going to be a big problem for us, all of us. Okay. In terms of payment system, I have mentioned here GoPay, OVO, Dana, and Genius. But if you look at the transaction, if you go to all this e-commerce site and you want to buy something, then there are ways of paying. Say, for example, the conventional one is you transfer antar rekening. So you transfer using, say, ATM or internet banking, m-banking, SMS banking. In other places, they're using card to credit or credit cards. In Indonesia, credit cards are not common. Credit card usage is kind of because of the way we do transaction. Anyway, there are new ways of transaction. All right, now people are using what do we call it? What do you call it? QRIS. This is a QR code based transaction. It's basically put a QRIS instead of having a different QR code for different companies, payment system, and so on. You have one QRIS. Ideally, you have one QRIS. You point to one QRIS, and then you get all this payment system. And then possibly in the future, there's going to be blockchain-based payment system. So my point is here, we cannot escape from electronic payment, okay, because it has become part of our life. Now, let's talk about security cases in Indonesia. I skip part of security cases abroad, but let's see what's happening in the security front related to Indonesia. Frequently, if you look into the dark web, you'll find people selling data or selling hacked data. Here's an example of a person who is selling, selling exclusive private databases. These databases are fresh and have never been sold. And you can see somewhere, okay, see, this is Indonesian cermati.com. And they said, they have 2.5 million records. Okay, so it's email, password, name, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is just one example. And then also recently, the same place, you can see that somebody is selling creditplus.com database. And this database consists of this: email, branch code, gender, birth date, education code, home status, job, and so on and so forth. But basically, they have complete information about you if you are a customer of Credit Plus. Okay. Now, this happened a while ago. Here is a posting in Twitter, I believe. Actor leaked the database of Tokopedia, a large Indonesian technology company specializing in e-commerce. So originally, they said they have, I think, 9 million accounts. Originally, they said they have 9 million accounts, and then they said have 15 million accounts, and at the end they have 91 million records. Okay. So is this true data? Well, I asked a friend of mine who had access to this data and asked them, okay, is that true? If it's true, can you see if there's my ID, my email ID, and what does he say about my ID there? So he do a quick search, grab, and he found out, okay, this is your ID. Is this correct? Okay, yeah, that's exactly correct. So this is actually a real database, Although the password are hashed, but it still contains email, names, and so on and so forth. Okay. Badan Cyber dan Sandi Nasional, they had a meeting because of this and other cases. Tokopedia and Bukalapak, by the way, was also hacked. So they had a meeting to discuss what we're going to do. Okay. Now, again, here, actor leaks information on 2.3 million Indonesian citizens. Data includes names, addresses, ID numbers, birthdays, and more. So if you look at the picture here, it looked like a KPU, right? A logo. So probably it's a database of what you call it, calon pemilih ya. Actor claims he will leak 200 million additional citizen information soon. So that's that. And recently there was also an issue about Dana Bansos. Dana Bansos. So, but this is a bit different. This is actually not a hack, but intentionally, the institution that provides this Bansos, they're showing. They're opening, not the database, they're opening their reports or their records on the internet to make sure that this dana, this aid, goes to the right person. So they have a database and they put its database, Bapak so and so at this address receive, bansos, and then they have a list of people who are supposed to receive this bansos. So you have it in plain text. Okay. The idea is that if you have it in plain text, so other people can check whether that person is actually still alive and poor and supposed to receive the bantuan social aid. So the idea is transparency, but to me this transparency is kind of done not right, because you disclose information about that person. So it has complete personal data. The problem with that is that when this information is there in the public, somebody can use it for other kind of purpose. Okay. For example, if you have a political party and you are going to have election in that region, and people who can people who are poor, and you can buy their votes. You may be able to buy their votes. Okay, so that's a bad thing about transparency done not right. Okay. And this is another example. Lewat aplikasi Kudo, mahasiswa bobol bank BUMN 16 billion rupiah. Jadi ada aplikasi Kudonya ini, ternyata mahasiswa bisa bobol, sehingga bobolnya itu bukan transfer tapi bank itu, misalnya saya beli pulsa segala macam gitu ya, sehingga banknya harus membayar segitu ya kepada merchant-merchant ya, 16 miliar. Okay. And then this funny thing, Bank Mandiri, one day they had a problem with their records. Some of their customers have zero, zero in the bank accounts, and sometimes they are missing zeros, and sometimes they got zero added into their account. I remember somebody told me, Pak Budi, my bank account was, I think it was 500,000 rupiah, I believe. 500,000 rupiah, I think so. And then because of this, this bank account became 5 million rupiah. So what he did, what did he do? He actually took the extra money. He took it, and then he didn't return it. When I asked, why didn't you return it? He said, because it was bank's fault, so it was not my fault. So you can see here saldo nasabah Bank Mandiri berubah 90%, kembalikan uang. This is assuming berubah menjadi bagus ya, added some values, but only 90% return the money, the one that not supposed to earn money. And then the last one is ransomware, malware. So this was, I believe, in 2017, I believe. That was when the time this ransomware WannaCry came out. Before that, there were more ransomwares, but WannaCry was actually the one that got public attention. So in 2017, this WannaCry ransomware appeared in many computers around the globe. So what happened is that your files are suddenly encrypted, and for example, you have documents, or for example, Office documents, and it became encrypted, so you cannot open those files. When you try to open those files, you get this, and basically it says, your files are still there, but you need password to open them. If you want to do that, say, send worth of send $300 worth of Bitcoin to this address. So if you have this address, you have Bitcoin, you pay them, and you're supposed to get the password to recover your files. Okay, but you'll never know, because these are bad guys. No honor among thieves. Perhaps you have paid $300, and then they said, "Oops, this is the wrong password," or they said, "Sorry, can't help you." So basically, when you have ransomware, something like this, my suggestion is you reinstall the operating system and restore your data from your backup. What if you don't have backup? Tough luck. Wassalam. It's gone, basically. Okay. And the last one, this is common. This was a case which basically created a big hoopla in Indonesia a while ago because of SwingSwap. So basically what happened is somebody targeted, say you was targeted by somebody, and this person actually found out about your bank account, or your I don't know, your internet banking account, or your Gojek account, and things like that. So when you ask this application, say Gojek, Tokopedia, or whatever, if you ask to reset password, I forgot the password, please reset it. And that reset or confirmation goes to your cell phone for an OTP, basically, okay, one-time password or confirmation. It goes to your SIM card, or it goes to SMS saying, please enter this number if you ask for password reset, or if you want to have a recovery or revoke or change password or whatever. So basically, what happened if you can take over somebody else's cell phone number, then basically game over. So what happened if somebody knows you, and this person actually goes to the bank with a fake identity. So this person brings, say, a fake KTP, and then goes to the operator, say one of the branches, and this person says, I lost my cell phone, and I lost my cell phone. Can you block it? This is my ID. Can I get a new SIM card? Okay, so the operator is supposed to do a verification, and after verifying the person in front of them, then they will give this person a new SIM card. Okay, so with this SIM card, basically this person becomes you in terms of the cell phone, and can get that OTP. So this is what's happening. I know this is kind of silly, because this person has to go to what you call it, a gerai telekomunikasi, and you have to present yourself with a fake ID, and you have to convince this CS customer service that you are that person. Okay, so it may not work if your face is kind of different, But then again, if the Grapari Telkomsel, for example, in that last case, didn't check the validity of the person, didn't check thoroughly, then this person can take over your cell phone. This is what they call a SIM swap. Okay. So those are examples of cases. Now let's go to a more theoretical aspect. When we say about security, information security or data security, basically security, there are three aspects or three goals. Those are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And some people call it CIA because of the first character of the word, CIA. So confidentiality, integrity, availability. There are other aspects or goals, for example, authorization, access control, auditability, non-repudiation, and so on and so forth. Yes, there are other aspects, but these three are the ones that are commonly used. So when I said, security, what I mean is confidentiality, integrity, availability. So if you're in my class and I ask you, what is security? And this is the answer. Okay, the answer is CIA. If you don't know this, then you failed my security class. The availability, the AE here is a bit difficult. Usually people are using authentication or access control, but no, the A is availability. So basically, these are the one that we know, confidentiality, as the name implies. This is the secrecy. The person or the data should be accessible only to intended person, kind of. There are ways to attack that, and there are ways to secure that. Integrity is data cannot be changed without permission of the guardian or the person that's supposed to be the guardian of this application, the guardian of this data. So integrity, you may not change. Availability means that the system, your data or your information should be available when you need them. Okay. So if you look into the examples that I've shown earlier, I actually arranged them in terms of confidentiality, integrity, availability. Remember examples about data leakage, that's part of confidentiality. And if you talked about Bank Mandiri, problem is data integrity, and if you talked about ransomware is availability. Okay, somebody's actually raised hand. Okay, Danang, yes.
Yes, but actually in the beginning that we're starting this class, we're talking about the security data also. We can save the data in the Google Drive with when we have to pay something, some money. Is it safe, Pak? More safe that because I think beberapa waktu lalu kita sempat ada data bahkan dari komputer kita yang kemudian tercuri seperti contoh malware tadi. Nah, kalau kita menyimpan itu di G Drive, something like that, is it more safety or not, Pak?
Okay. So yeah, the question is it safer if we put data locally or remotely, or this the same? For example, you put data in a cloud like Google Drive, Dropbox, and so on and so forth. Okay. The answer is it could be the same. It depends how good you are keeping your system secure. So if your system is secure, if you know how to do it, or if your team knows how to do it, then having the data locally is actually much better. Okay, so one thing, because we are not sure what's going on outside there. Now, if you put the data, say, in a cloud provider, say Google and other companies like Amazon, things like that, they're good in their security system. They're good. But the problem is sometimes you have a weak password. Sometimes your account can be taken over. So that's going to be the same. So in short, it depends. Tergantung dari pinter-pinteran mana. Kalau kita memang jagoan mengamankan data di kita locally. Tapi secara sistem, apakah Google bagus? Bagus. Tapi lagi-lagi seringkali itu yang di-attack bukan Google-nya, tapi akun kitanya. Jadi kita password yang dihack lah, segala macam. Jadi bukan layanan di sana. Nah, Itu yang pertama. Yang kedua ini masalah legal biasanya. Biasanya. Kalau kita taruh data kita katakanlah di Amazon lah, atau di mana ya, di data center di Singapura atau di Amazon di Amerika sana gitu ya. Misalnya ya, di AWS taruh data di sana. Ketika kita ada kasus, misalnya KPK melakukan penyidikan segala macam, oke, maka seringkali kita harus punya akses kepada data tersebut. Nah, seringkali perusahaan yang berada di yang memberikan layanan itu tidak bisa menyediakan data karena kita harus memberikan surat ya. Kalau misalnya tadi Google Drive katakanlah, berarti nanti penyidik harus memberikan surat kepada Google. Google, kami mau menyidik ini membutuhkan data ini. Maka Google akan bilang, oh oke, you have to give us a subpoena warrant or apalah gitu ya. Surat yang mana itu nanti diberikan ke Google di Amerika. Berarti nanti harus mengajukannya melewati Interpol lah segala macam. Jadi banyak sekali red tape-nya, sehingga kalau memburu data gitu, wah kata ini ya penyidik, wah ini belum apa-apa orang udah kabur duluan kali ya sebelum datanya bisa kita ambil gitu. Nah kalau dia berada di dalam negeri, maka perusahaan-perusahaan ini patuh terhadap aturan dalam negeri, sehingga ketika pemerintah bilang buka datanya maka akan dibuka gitu ya untuk kasus-kasus itu. Jadi dari kacamata pemerintah, dari kata penyidik, memang lebih menarik, lebih bagus kalau datanya lokal, ya begitu. Jadi ini nih. Tapi kalau dari segi user, data lokal maupun data remote itu tergantung dari kemampuan kita mengelola security-nya. Nah, ada tambahan lagi. Kalau kita taruh data lokal, seberapa baiknya kita melakukan backup misalnya. Kita taruh data di lokal, tiba-tiba hard disk kita kena virus atau kena malware segala macam, bubar jalan atau hard disknya dicolong atau kita lupa membackup, hard disknya hilang. Nah, kalau ditaruh di server ya itu mereka membackup datanya, saya nggak tahu ya, tergantung dari policy mereka. Ada yang setidaknya regular melakukan backup sehingga datanya lebih dalam tanda petik lebih terjaga kalau dari segi availability. Jadi kalau kita bicara tentang confidentiality-nya ya tergantung seberapa secure kita mengamankan. Jadi gitu tadi misalnya password-nya lah segala macam gitu.
Sir, let's say I want to build a new business for the e-commerce. So it will be contact with so many person, right? And they will give us their data for the transaction. So what should we do, sir?
Nah, kalau untuk kasus seperti itu paling gampang sekarang. Nah, sekarang gini, kalau startup ya, startup biasanya memilih AWS. Kenapa? Karena AWS memberikan ininya gratis biasanya atau memberikan bonus. Misalnya, oke, kami berikan Anda $1.000 worth of storage di AWS. $1.000. Kalau kita lihat misalnya, oh langganannya berapa? Sebulan $20. $1.000 bisa berapa bulan ya? Sehingga orang bilang, oke kita pergi ke AWS saja. Ya karena itu yang paling banyak. Itulah sebabnya banyak startup menggunakan AWS untuk menggunakan datanya. Kalau kita langganan lokal, belum apa-apa udah harus bayar. Kalau kita harus menyetup server sendiri, belum apa-apa kita harus capex ya. Kita harus beli server, ini ruangan data center segala macam. Jadi it doesn't make sense. Jadi kalau biasanya startup selalu dia pakai jasa cloud. Selalu, hampir selalu. Kalau sekarang kita sudah besar, katakanlah bank. Nah kalau bank kita bisa menggunakan teknologi cloud, tapi cloud-nya punyaan kita sendiri. Jadi sebenarnya teknologinya on-premise lah, bisa ini, tapi sebetulnya tidak menggunakan jasanya kayak Amazon gitu, AWS nggak perlu. Gitu. Kalau perusahaan sudah demikian besar sehingga mampu mengelola datanya sendiri. Tapi kalau mau startup, I would say go with what's available and what's cheaper, which is usually cloud.
Thank you, sir.
Kalau datanya adalah perbankan, nah aturan perbankan ini BI masih tetap kekeh tidak boleh ya kalau perbankan ya. Bank itu harus punya data center di Indonesia. Jadi kalau bank ya, tapi kalau di luar itu kita belum punya fintech segala macam, belum ada aturan bahwa data center harus di Indonesia. Bank itu. Nah, yang kedua adalah government ya, government itu boleh nggak ditaruh datanya di luar negeri. Peraturan yang saya paham tuh masih nggak boleh. Tapi mulai dikendorkan. Kalau dulu bilang nggak boleh, semua data yang government harus berada di Indonesia. Karena government ya beda dengan commerce ya. Government bukan masalah murah meriahnya, tapi memang ya penting juga ya, tapi lebih ke arah kemandirian ya kalau data government itu. Makanya harus ada di Indonesia. Nah kemarin saya lupa apakah jadi atau enggak, itu mau diperlemah. Jadi bukannya boleh atau tidak boleh, tapi tergantung dari risiko atau keberuntukannya si data tersebut. Jadi kalau datanya bersifat publik, boleh di hosting di luar negeri, ya gitu, boleh di luar negeri. Kalau yang sifatnya data yang kritikal atau penting harus tetap di Indonesia. Itu. Nah, yang jadi masalah waktu itu ada contoh juga, misalnya layanan, saya lupa ya dari mana ya. Satu selain DigitalOcean ada satu lagi yang memberikan layanan DNS domain. Gratis, di protection terhadap attack segala macam, tapi letaknya di luar negeri. Nah, bingunglah pemerintah Indonesia gitu ya. Nah itu dia, boleh nggak kita menggunakan layanan tersebut? If you are a small startup, I would say find whatever cheaper and whatever makes sense to start it. It doesn't have to be in Indonesia. And usually because of that, capex is expensive, capex is difficult. That's why people are going to the cloud, and that's why AWS they're gaining popularity among startups. Begitu jawaban.
Thank you, sir.
Ya. Kita lanjutkan lagi ya. Nanti kalau ada pertanyaan silakan. If you have more question, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. So we go back to at the beginning, we have examples, and this is the foundation of the principle of security is CIA. So if somebody said, Pak Budi, can you evaluate our system? Can you evaluate our internet banking system? Or can you evaluate our application and things like that? Usually I look at what is the C in your application, what is the I in your application, what is your A in your application, and we have to derive kind of facts from this CIA thing related to your application or your system. Based on that, then later on we can kind of decide whether your system is safe enough to be used, or whether you have to go through some what do you call it, improvement first. Okay, so this is the theory. Now let's move on. Okay, now if you look at this, confidentiality is the secrecy. But if we talk about personal information, then it is called privacy. So privacy, if the data is related to personal information, then we call it privacy. When we mean by personal data, it's basically all kinds of things, but usually related to the person or the customer. So customer data can be considered of privacy. Health data is also considered privacy. Citizen data, remember in the example I've shown you, the data KTP, that citizen data has to be protected because of privacy. Now, why should we protect our personal data? Now, if you look at the history of privacy, usually the history is not long time ago. The history, if you look at, I believe, I'm not sure, the US is about 100, I guess about 150 years, so not more than that, I think. So it is considered still new, because even in the Europe, it is similar. So a while ago, I look at this a meme, a graph that shows a restroom or toilet where they have two toilets, and people said, "Ooh, it's gross." If you have to go while there's, if you have somebody else in the toilet, that's kind of gross, right? But you have to remember, in the medieval, I believe, even in the Europe, it was common for people to have, take a leak in stalls that are near to each other. Jadi emang lucu ya. Jadi ada orang buang air besar pun bersebelahan tuh ada. Dulu ya. Kalau sekarang nggak kebayang oleh kita, waduh, nggak bisa konsen gitu ya. Malu, nggak bisa konsen. Tapi kalau dulu sambil buang air besar sambil ngobrol. Jadi bagaimana? No. Yeah, so culturally it has changed from 150 years ago to now. So it's going to change. Now some culture it changed faster compared to other culture. So I'll give you an example. Kalau kita bicara, if we talked about culture in Western society, say in Europe, they're very, very privacy related, but not us. We are very open to our data. For example, I'll give you an example. How many of you use your real names? Sorry, not real names, real birth date in your social media? How many of you? Please raise your hands. So I just want to know, how many of you are, using your real birthday.
Me, sir.
Okay. Most Indonesians use the real birth date, right? When I ask them why, well, because if I have birthday, then I want to get best wishes from all my friends, right? Supaya dapat ucapan selamat ulang tahun, kan? Jadi tanggalnya benar-benar real. Gitu. Okay, so that's that. If you are a Westerner, and usually people said, I don't want people to know my birth date. Please hide my birth date. I will give you my birth date, but please hide it. But for us, we want people to know our birth date. Yeah. Again, if you have your media social, Facebook or Facebook as an example, not only you put your birth date, you also put your schools where you went to. Kita memasukkan data SD kita, SMP, SMA, perguruan tinggi dan seterusnya kita masukkan di situ semua gitu ya. Kenapa kita masukkan? Supaya kalau ada reunian saya diundang, Pak, atau saya diberitahu. As simple as that, right? Indonesians also love to take pictures of their families, kids, parents, grandparents. They take pictures of the things that are related to their families. So everything we put on the internet, everything we put on social media. The only thing missing from our social media is kartu keluarga. Tinggal taruh kartu keluarga, bereslah semuanya. Jadi kita tanya ke Facebook untuk pemilu, kita tanya ke Facebook aja karena dia punya semuanya. So that's that, right? So here's the thing. Okay, so why should we protect our data? Jadi orang Indonesia dengan orang ini beda ya. Well, because I'm trying to convince you that we should protect our personal data. But as Indonesians, usually that's not in our culture. We love to share our personal data. When we go to other people said, okay, ini keluarga saya, this is my kids, this is my niece, nephew, families, my grandma, and so on, right? Jadi kita malah menceritakan keluarga itu, ini anaknya ini anak saya sekolahnya di sini. Malah kita ceritakan dengan kebanggaan, malah cerita kemana-mana gitu ya. Orang Indonesia begitu. Nah itulah dia agak susah ya, dari culture ini akan berbeda. Orang Barat akan sangat protektif terhadap datanya, sementara orang Indonesia tidak. Kalau kita ngadain acara, biasanya saya diminta jadi pembicara di acara, diminta untuk ngisi acara. Pak, biodatanya, nama, alamat, tempat tanggal lahir, hobi, semuanya komplit itu ditanya gitu ya. Why? Kan saya di sini cuma memberikan presentasi. That's all gitu ya. Jadi itu. Nah, tapi saya ingin convince banyak teman-teman yang mengatakan bahwa we should protect our data. Why? Because of obviously disgrace, if we have aib ya. Jadi kita ya jangan diumbar di mana-mana gitu ya. Jadi ini memang sebaiknya diproteksi. The other thing is our data can be used by other for financial purposes without our consent. They're selling our data. They're asking us about our personal data, and they're selling it. They're making money without our consent. Okay, so that's the thing. Now, for me, the third part is actually the most significant part or the most important part. That is, our personal data is usually used as part of our authentication. For example, as part of our password or PIN. Many people using their birth date as part of their PIN, ATM PIN. Why? Because it's difficult to remember, to memorize numbers. The easiest thing is to remember our birth date, right? So that's why many people are using birth date or part of birth date as part of their PIN, password, and so on and so forth. So if somebody knows your birth date, then they might guess your PIN or password. So if I have your I don't know, ATM card, for example, I'm not going to try with 000000, right? I'll try it first with your birth date. Okay, he was born in this, and so. Okay, probably those three numbers are this ATM PIN number. Okay. So when you want to do brute force, you have to look at data or numbers related to that person. Okay. So at ICA, our number, our KTP number was thought to be secure. So if you want to do something, usually they ask you nomor NIK segala macam, right? But people are wrong. NIK nomor KTP kita. Let's assume that our NIK is already well known by other people. Okay. Jadi ada banyak tempat yang menunjukkan kebocoran data kita. Gitu. Jadi kita harus ambil asumsi bahwa NIK kita memang sudah bocor ada di mana-mana. Dan yang menariknya di NIK kita, angkanya itu sudah ada angka tanggal lahir kita. Jadi kalau Anda lihat itu ya, NIK tanggal lahir berapa, gendernya apa tuh udah bisa kelihatan di NIK-nya. So whoever did the NIK, the number, I think it's wrong. It's not supposed to be that. Gitu. Ya, jadi kita kalau kita menggunakan NIK atau tadi ya data KTP sebagai bagian dari authentication, oke, tapi kalau yang utama menurut saya sekarang it's wrong karena kita boleh ambil asumsi bahwa NIK kita sudah diketahui oleh orang banyak. Okay. And the other thing is loss control. This is also important. What if our data is inaccurate? Okay, so for example, what if the data in Direktorat Pajak says you are rich, tiba-tiba ada data baru, you have 30 hektar tanah gitu, tiba-tiba Anda punya 30 hektar tanah gitu. Amin dulu aja, amin Pak gitu ya. Amin Pak gitu. Nah, when we talk about the tax, oke, tidak amin Pak gitu ya. Tiba-tiba Anda disuruh bayar pajak lebih banyak. Kenapa? Karena katanya Bapak memiliki mobilnya ada 7 Pak sekarang Pak. Oh, kok bisa 7? Gimana caranya gitu? What if the data is inaccurate itu? Jadi kita kan nggak tahu datanya, tiba-tiba disuruh bayar pajak lebih gitu. Can we fix it? Can we ask providers to remove or modify our data? Say for example, no, I have only 1 or 2 cars. That's wrong. Or your data is wrong. Can you change it, correct it? Now, is there a way we can fix that? Okay. In many providers, they're not allow you to change whatever data they have, right? Because they're worried that people will change data frequently or maybe abusing the facility to change data. The other thing is, how do we know what the data they have on us in the first place, right? So, for example, how do they know the data about our, say, cars, number of cars? How did they get it and things like that? Yeah. So we don't know what data they have on us. So that's the thing also. In any case, we're losing our control over our data. So suddenly they have more data about us than we already know. Okay. So this is an effect that we lost control. Okay. The other thing is, what if the data is being used outside the context of data collection? For example, these days we have an application, I can't remember the name of the application, which basically to tell you whether you are surrounded or you are close to people who have COVID, right? COVID-19. Now, the thing is, when you use these applications, you have to open up. You have to tell people whether you are sick or not. This is your health data, and we're not sure what data. Whether this data is collected properly, guarded properly or not. So, for example, assuming they guarded this properly, but when you put the data there, and suddenly, for some reason, whether it is true or not, your area is considered like a red zone or even black. Lots of people with COVID in your region, then suddenly the price of your area, the land price, harga tanah suddenly tank. Harga tanah tiba-tiba menjadi jatuh. Jadi properti Anda tiba-tiba harganya berkurang. Kenapa? Karena Pak itu daerahnya daerah wabah Pak, daerah kena COVID. Atau kalau dulu mungkin daerah HIV atau daerah DBD, nama berdarah, or so on and so forth ya. Jadi data itu digunakan dalam konteks kesehatan, tapi digunakan dalam konteks lain sehingga harga tanah bisa jadi lebih murah. Jadi kita mau jualan nggak bisa, atau malah harga pajaknya bisa lebih mahal, and so on and so forth ya itu. Jadi itu data yang digunakan di luar konteks pengumpulan data. What if they use this data also for discrimination? For example, not only they look at your kind of wealth, but they also look at your religion, for example, and then they said, oh, you cannot stay here because you have different religion with us. So that's again data is collected outside the context. Okay, ini jadi menjadi masalah ya. Jadi datanya harus di konteksnya apa nih? Ya. Now we give data to a provider to get a certain service, right? Be that telecommunication provider, internet provider, or electricity provider. I don't know, but basically you give this data to the provider, okay, to get a certain service. And usually they ask our identity to as part of authentication. Okay, is this person Budi Rajo? Okay, if you are Budi Rajo, give me a copy of your KTP and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the original idea, is to make sure that I am Budi Rajo. Okay, what if instead of just collecting this data just for the sake of authentication, they use this data and then they sell it, and they can say, oh, okay, they sell this data to other companies, and they said, hey, by the way, in this region, you can sell this person cars because they have no cars this day, and so on and so forth. So what to do if your data is being a transaction for other purposes? What if this this company went bankrupt? So, for example, you go to this company, for example, this company Asuransi Budi Rajo, for example, right? I'm providing insurance for everything, and you go to my website, okay, and you compare it. Oh, okay, it's cheaper than other insurance companies, right? What if in the middle of the transaction, or in the middle of the business, for example, 6 months down the road, my company, my insurance company, that insurance company went bankrupt? What happened to the data? Should I destroy it? Should I give it back to you? I have no idea, right? So the thing is, when somebody said, you should destroy it or whatever, right? Well, we went bankrupt. We have no money to do that. We didn't even have money to pay our creditor back. Like, for example, why should we spend money to remove your data? Okay, so there is no incentive to do that. Okay, so the status of your data is questionable. So that's why this is also a big problem. Jadi banyak perusahaan startup sekarang yang ngasal-ngasal gitu ya, yang kalau saya bilang fly by night, dalam 3 bulan sampai 6 bulan perusahaannya bangkrut. Tapi dia udah ngumpulin data yang banyak ya. Terus bagaimana dengan datanya itu? Ya boro-boro, Pak, saya mau beresin data itu, kan perusahaan saya udah bangkrut, Pak. Nah, so datanya bisa dijual belikan, ditinggalkan begitu saja. And we have no idea how much data should we give to this provider. Secukupnya gimana gitu ya? Kan saya butuhkan untuk autentikasi. Would information about KTP is good enough? Or do you have to supplement that with other information, kartu keluarga, for example, or it's it's too much probably. Now, for example, telecommunication. For me, for operator telecommunication, for cell phone operators, for example, KTP is good enough. They don't have to have access to kartu keluarga. The reason is that in my kartu keluarga, there are other people's, my children, my spouse, and they're not on your, say, telecommunication company. You're not. Well, they have different operators, right? So I don't want to give their data to you, because you might then contact them and provide them with, advertising and things like that. So again, what is good enough? Secukupnya, what is secukupnya? Okay. Now, the last part is this: when there is a problem, who's supposed to be responsible? Like example, I gave you an example earlier, right? All those companies who have data leakage problems. So who are supposed to be responsible? The providers. They must be responsible for data security. They have when they have problems like this, they should be penalized. These companies are not, small companies. Itu bukan perusahaan kacang-kacang. They are good companies, right? So I know that they're doing their job to keep the security of their system. But something maybe it was kind of a fluke, mungkin lalai pas lagi upgrade, kelupaan dan lain sebagainya, itu satu hal ya. Yang kedua mungkin bodoh aja, crackernya lebih jagoan gitu ya. Ya jadi nasib aja gitu ya. Nah, that's about this. Now, atau memang jahat, dia memang sengaja membocorkan data kita ya. Now, the third one, kalau jahat memang harus masuk penjara. The third one is bit different, it's criminal. But usually what happen is that the software is not up to date and things like that. So data leakage happen, and these providers should be penalized. Okay. Kalau sekarang kan yang repot ininya, usernya, kita yang harus ganti password and things like that, right? Kenapa providernya nggak dipenalize? Dia kan yang harusnya bertanggung jawab ya. Now, to do that, how do we make sure that they're doing their job in terms of the security? So that's why providers must perform regular security audit done by independent auditors. Okay. Now, to do that, to make sure that this process is there, then there has to be a regulation. Now, that regulation is usually directed to certain fields, for example, in finance, and then also in energy, and then in telecommunication. Yeah, so they should have regulations related to this. Okay, that is, the provider must be responsible for data security. If they fail to do so, then they have to be penalized.
Sir, halo.
Yes.
Pak Indrawan raise their hand.
Oh, oke, saya nggak kelihatan di sini. Oke, sorry. Sebentar, sorry. Oke, silakan. Sorry, nggak kelihatan di sini ya. Ada yang mau tanya, silakan. Halo, halo. Siapa yang mau nanya? Tidak jadi.
Question,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mengenai isu ke provider, memangnya di Indonesia ada sir yang bisa kita, let's say kita bikin NDA dengan satu provider, sehingga ketika dia mau menggaranti data kita, ya kita bayar mahal misalnya. Tapi ketika dia tidak garanti, dia siap di penalti. Saya rasa belum ada sir Indonesia yang bisa kayak gitu sir.
Enggak, kalau ini ya, kalau bahwa sebuah perusahaan harus menjaga customer-nya ada. Itu harus menjaga, itu kewajiban menjaganya ada. Nah, cuma sekarang masalah penaltinya yang berapa, nah ini yang kita belum sepakat. Sebagai contoh, kalau kami biasa ya, kalau kami setiap pekerjaan dengan klien kami, kan perusahaan saya perusahaan security ya, ngaudit segala macam. Berarti ketika ngaudit kan saya punya data klien ya. Jadi kami harus tanda tangan NDA bahwa kami berjanji tidak akan membocorkan data perusahaan klien kami dan lain sebagainya gitu ya. Itu kita harus tanda tangan ya. Tanda tangan udah gitu ya. Nah, bahwa kita harus bertanggung jawab, bahwa kita tidak kebocoran data. Misalnya data kliennya pas kita audit datanya bocor ke publik, malah wah perusahaan ini PT ini bisa dihack segala macam, datanya dari Pak Budi, wah itu ancur-ancuran saya kan ya, nggak boleh kita cerita seperti itu, oke ya. Nah, itu jadi nggak boleh, ada NDA-nya itu. Nah sekarang masalahnya kalau terjadi kebocoran, memang saya udah menjaga segala macam, terjadi kebocoran ya, sama seperti kasus-kasus tadi si e-commerce-nya, memang dia udah ngejagain terjadi bocor. Nah maka hukumannya apa? Kan dia memang berjanji akan menjaga. Tapi kalau itu terjadi, hukumannya apa? Nah, ini sekarang lagi ada masalah, lagi bukan ada masalah, lagi ada perdebatan, ya. Ada PDP, perlindungan data pribadi. Jadi sedang ada RUU rancangan undang-undang, nanti kita bicara tentang privacy tadi itu ya, RUU privacy, kalau Indonesia itu perlindungan data pribadi. Nah itu sudah jadi RUU. Nah sekarang di situ sudah jelas, ya, bahwa kalau operator atau ini ya, bertanggung jawab, bukan operator ya, providers ya, bertanggung jawab terhadap datanya. Nah kalau ada tadi masalah, maka apa yang terjadi? Nah yang ributnya adalah itu pidana atau perdata. Saya tidak suka pidana, kalau gitu nanti perusahaan banyak yang masuk penjara. Lebih perdata aja. Wah tapi kalau perdata Pak itu tidak ada efek jerahnya, udah dibayar aja selesai gitu. Terutama untuk perusahaan-perusahaan besar. Misalnya katakanlah misalnya ya, data Tokopedia bocor. Kena penalti berapa? 20 juta. 20 juta bayar aja. 50 juta bayar aja, ya sudah selesai kan. Nggak ada efek jerahnya gitu. Nah, ini yang harus ada efek jerahnya gitu. Netting susah membalance itu. Sekarang kita lagi perdebatkan apa ya hukumannya.
Kalau dari undang-undang ada ya perlindungan ya?
Sekarang lagi RUU. Jadi sekarang setahu saya sudah di DPR ya. Komisi 1 kali ya. Saya nggak tahu ya. Kalau setahu saya udah di DPR.
Tapi itu kalau udah ada bisa jadi pidana, Sir.
Oh, belum tentu karena dalam undang-undang bisa kita buat perdata di situ.
Ya.
Ya bisa. Nah justru saya pengennya perdata aja, nggak usah pidana. Kalau sedikit-sedikit penjara, sedikit-sedikit penjara, ini kita tidak mempercayai bangsa sendiri ya. Dan yang kedua penjaranya penuh. Kita harus bedakan antara orang jahat dan orang bodoh. Gitu ya. Kalau orang yang jahat yang jual data kita kemana-mana jahat ya, masuk penjara oke. Tapi kalau dia bodoh dikadalin sama hacker-cracker kan ya, berarti dia bodoh kan ya. Jangan masuk penjara dong. Kita kasih ini aja, slap aja. Kamu bodoh, benerin ya. Kamu bodoh, kamu kasih denda 1 miliar misalnya. Jangan gitu lagi ya. Nah, gitu kan ya. Tapi nggak masuk penjara. Kalau masuk penjara ya itu jahat ya kan. Menurut saya nggak jahat. Tapi orang bilang kalau cuma didenda 10 juta, 20 juta, 100 juta, 1 M, perusahaan-perusahahan gede mah cuek aja, Pak. Tenang aja tuh, tinggal bayar aja. Cost of doing business gitu ya. Data kita dijual 15 miliar, kenapa Pak? Kena dendanya 1 miliar, balik modal tuh udah. Ya, jadi kita bingung membalance-nya.
Sir, kalau yang kayak Alibaba kan sama Google udah dari Indonesia nih, Sir.
Ya.
Itu bisa nggak mereka dikenakan RUU itu nanti, Sir?
Selama mereka ada di Indonesia bisa.
Ya kan, mereka udah ada di sini soalnya kan.
Ya.
Mungkin itu menjadi penguatan kita ketika data company kita mau taruh di cloud dengan confident tanda kutip kita punya NDA itu gitu, punya dilindungi sama RUU tadi. Bisa ya, Sir ya?
Bisa. Jadi semua perusahaan itu masuk di Indonesia maka dia bisa. Justru yang susah kalau dia nggak ada di Indonesia, tapi orang taruh di cloud-nya Google misalnya, taruh cloud-nya Amazon, dia tahu kan itu bisa diakses dari internet kan ya, tapi perusahaannya di Amerika, nggak ada di Indonesia. Oh malah susah kita. Kan itu perusahaan Amerika.
Sir, ketika dia backup redundant ke tempat lain itu gimana, Sir?
Nah itu dia, yang susah tuh gini misalnya, kliennya dari perusahaan Indonesia, perusahaannya Amerika, backup-nya di Belanda. Hukum mana yang dipakai ini kan ya? Masalah tadi retention, data ini itu beda-beda. Misalnya, oh ini backup hanya bisa kalau misalnya data perbankan, backup harus ada 6 tahun. Tapi si ini bilang kalau di kami beda lagi Pak, kami di Amerika cuma 2 tahun misalnya. Sementara di Belanda, oh justru kita beda. Kalau data itu sudah lewat dari 3 tahun harus di-delete malah. Wah, kan repot tuh. Jadi memang susah ya. Jadi tapi itu kalau kita bilang itu memang harus, nah ini tadi lokalitasnya apa gitu ya. Nah itu yang kita banyak bisa bicara diskusi dengan Pak Dan Rifanto misalnya itu. Dia cerita tentang lokalitasnya itu bisa di mana, bisa di internet, bisa di segala macam. Tapi tadi secara corporate bagusnya ada di Indonesia sehingga dia juga kena itu.
Walaupun yang Indonesia sekelas Google belum ada, Sir ya?
Belum lah. Tapi kalau cloud-nya banyak di Indonesia. Saya aja
bukan perusahaan ya, Sir ya. Maksudnya security infranya, availability-nya itu udah ada nggak sekelas itu, Sir, di Indonesia, Sir?
Oh, kalau itu lumayan kalau saya lihat ya dari teman-teman. Misalnya saya pakai layanan Bisnet Geo sekarang. Itu saya lebih cepat daripada yang lain-lain ya. Cuma masalahnya kalau AWS saya gratis. Bisnet Geo saya bayar. Mendingan mana dong? Kalau saya buat startup, saya pakai yang gratis dulu gitu ya. Kalau sudah jalan, baru saya pakai yang di Indonesia. Saya pakai Indonesia, pakai Bisnet. Bisnet setahu saya waktu di tes sama teman saya lebih bagus daripada Digital Ocean malah. Jadi Singapura malah bagusan Bisnet di Jakarta. Jadi saya pakai Bisnet Geo. Itu satu. Terus saya juga pakai kemarin itu sebelumnya saya pakai Cloud Kilat dan Dewa Web.
Oh iya, lokal tuh, Sir.
Lokal. Oh ya, saya pakai lokal. Jadi saya pakai lokal keyword juga saya pakai. Jadi saya senang lokal sih ya. Nah, kecuali untuk hal-hal yang besar, yang macam-macam yang harganya kalau pakai lokal jadi mahal, saya terpaksa pakai AWS.
Jadi customer-nya, Sir, taruh di perusahaan itu, Sir ya? Bukan Sir punya hosting sendiri?
Enggak, saya misalnya kayak gini, misalnya kita harus melakukan komputasi terhadap face detection segala macam gitu kan ya. Datanya itu misalnya ada 200.000 data face yang harus saya proses segala macam. Itu kan semuanya datanya harus taruh di cloud dulu terus diproses di sana kan. Itu terpaksa.
Buat project base ya, Sir?
Ya, project base. Nanti setelah selesai segala macam kita take down balik lagi ke sini.
Oke, Sir. Siap, Sir.
Ya. Ada lagi silakan. Indrawan Sumawinata jadi mau tanya? Kalau enggak, hands-nya saya lower lagi. Mungkin kepencet aja tadi ya.
Oh iya, kepencet, Sir. Sorry. Itu yang tadi, Sir. Yang biodata.
Ya.
Maksudnya tadi saya raise hand pas lagi yang Sir nanya siapa
Oh,
yang
oke.
pakai
Iya,
tanggal
iya.
asli di
Oke.
sosial media sih, Sir.
Oke. Yes, oke. Sip. Saya lanjutkan kembali ya. Nanti kalau ada yang nanya lagi, silahkan. Sebentar, saya share lagi. Nah, saya lanjutkan lagi dengan topik tadi ya. Kalau tadi kan, nah ini kan ya. Sekarang ada security tips ini yang practical. So, these are more practical tips. First, from our experience, most of the problems related to the software these days, right? These days, people are thinking about network security and things like that, but these days are mostly software security. The problem is that many people are still using obsolete software. I've seen clients who are still using DOS, Windows NT, and obviously this OS, they don't have security in place because they're not supported anymore. Okay. Now, when I asked them, why don't you upgrade? And they said, it's been running for a while. It's been running and no problem so far, and we're not connected to the internet. Why should we upgrade? If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? So most of these companies who are still using old software, when they connect to the internet, when they connect to a network, then there's going to be a problem because they are still running old software. The same thing if you have a system running in your office already connected and you have to update regularly. Okay, sometimes we cannot update for certain kind of reasons. At one point, for example, I asked a community, why shouldn't we upgrade, say, software in Warnet, for example? Well, they said, yeah, mostly in Warnet, in our Warnet, our software or Windows, everything is bajakan, right? So they cannot upgrade the software because they're bajakan, because they're not, they cannot update or they did not upgrade the software. Then there are security holes. So updating your OS or your software regularly usually solve the majority of the problems. For example, we are using Zoom right here. If you are using an older version of Zoom, say, for example, I forgot, version 3 or something, which are very old, then there are security holes inside that applications. This day, we are using Zoom version 5, right? Those problems have been removed from the newer version. So that's the thing. If you update your OS or software, then you solve one of the biggest problem, a big chunk of the problem. Now, sometimes you cannot update the software because of application running on top of that software. We have clients who cannot update the server or the software in the server. When I ask them why couldn't you upgrade the software or the OS of the server, they said, well, Pak, if I upgrade the operating system of the server, then I also have to upgrade the application running on top of it. For example, if I have to upgrade my main server, the OS, then I have to upgrade my Oracle. Okay. If I upgrade my Oracle, then I have to upgrade my ERP on top of that. So what's supposed to be a simple or cheap solution, just upgrading one OS, becomes a complicated and more expensive problem because you have to upgrade your database, your ERP. So those kind of machines or environment, it is difficult to upgrade regularly. So you have to be careful to do that. Okay. But that's not the majority. Okay. Jadi kita juga itu in reality ada kayak gitu tuh banyak kasus-kasus yang besar. Kami waktu itu juga ada satu klien kami di mining company juga sama. ERP-nya, wah nggak bisa Pak, ini kalau di-upgrade, itu Unix system ya. Unix systemnya juga udah lama, kalau Unix systemnya di-upgrade juga, Oracle-nya jalan, ERP-nya, wah udah nggak bisa. Tapi itu bolong setengah mati. Jadi waktu itu memang dia tidak terjabung ke internet ya, tapi itu bisa di-attack oleh local users. Jadi kita harus itu batasi local users-nya. Waktu itu kita batasi, kita pasangkan firewall lah, kita pasangkan macam-macam ya. Sehingga si server tadi terlindungi secara OS, meskipun kita tahu itu udah kuno, tapi di luar dia nggak kelihatan lagi gitu ya. Jadi kita kasih bedengan di luarnya, gitu, kita kasih bedengan. Karena tadi kita tahu, wah ini nggak harus di-upgrade. Nah, habis itu kita bilang ke manajemen, oke, you have to plan, say 2, 5, 3 years down the line, you have to upgrade this, but you have to plan it now, gitu kan, harus masukin budget lah segala macam. Karena itu upgrade yang membutuhkan waktu at least setahun 2 tahun ya, nggak bisa sekarang gitu ya. Jadi gitu. Ya, so reality begitu. Tapi in general ya tadi ya, upgrading software solves many problems, many security problems. So if you are using your personal computers, you are using your personal cell phones and things like that, update it regularly, okay? Because it solves many problems, many security problems. The second is update antivirus. Jadi harus diupdate ya antivirus ini harus kita update secara berkala. So you get the latest update of the latest attacks. Now, this might be difficult. Do not install questionable applications for those who are using cell phones, right? There's a temptation. You want to install everything. Oh, there's no application. Let's install it. Oh, there's new application and this kind of application. You install it. Oh, there's TikTok. Okay, let's install it. Oh, there's Pokemon Go. Install it and things like that, right? So if you want to do that, I would suggest you use another cell phone. So use a cell phone for your transaction system. You have mobile banking or whatever, right? In your main phone, and then you have another phone for your social media or play phone. So if something's happened to this, you're okay because your transaction system is on another cell phone. But as a general guidelines, do not install questionable application. Okay. Go through the original or the former Play Store, Apple Store, right? Now this is part of the one that is tricky, but it is again similar to the OS. This is common problem. Password. Okay. Now I've seen many weak password because the passwords are related to birth date, your personal information, your PIN, your password has something to do with you. So that's a problem. Okay. So if you want to create problem, do not use anything related to you. Okay. So if I found out your say ATM, right, then I'm not going to guess the PIN from 0000 to 99999, right? I'm going to guess it based on your birth date. I will say, okay, this is your birth date. Let's try that one first. Okay. So that's that. Okay. The same thing if you have a password in your computer and things like that, using words in dictionary. Because even if you have numbers, right? Because when we do a password cracking, usually the first thing we do is we look at the dictionary and use dictionary just to crack the password. Okay. We use your personal information and anything with the any word with the dictionary. Forget it. Even the dictionary, even if the word is in bahasa daerah, still guessable, because if you have access to a dictionary in that language, then that's it. Done. Okay. The other thing is shared password. Okay. Now this is a protection against brute force attack. Brute force attack meaning means I'm guessing, like the name implies, brute force. A, B, C, and then A, B, A, C, A, D, and so on, and then B, A, and so on, right? If your password is less than 6 characters, then your password is guessable, because there are machines out there with capabilities to check all possible combinations. If the combinations are using characters, numbers, whatever, and shorter than 6 characters. If you have 8 characters or more, then it is good, at least until today. Okay, I don't know in the future if I have a bigger machine. If other crackers have bigger machine, then probably it's going to be easier also. But then again, there are ways also to protect brute force. Okay. No, the problem with this is now we are not allowed to use the same password for different applications, or different, say in this example, social media. You're not supposed to use the same password for your e-commerce, in Tokopedia, in Shopee, in Bukalapak. You have to use different passwords. If you have other application, you have Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, don't use the same password. Now the problem is, then how do I memorize that, Pak? Because I have so many accounts. Now that's the killer, the $1 million question. We're still at this stage. We're still, don't know what the best way to do it. Some people, younger generation, usually use password manager. Okay. So they have this password manager application, and they store all this password there. If they forget how to do it, forget the password, they open this password manager and they can track it down. Of course, this password manager is also protected. But what if somebody hacked your password manager? No, that's a problem. So that's the younger generation. The older generation usually resort to writing their passwords in books. So they keep their books, at home or whatever, away from the computers, but they have somewhere to put the passwords there. So in writing. Okay. So those two are the most commonly used method to kind of store or memorize password. We still don't know a better one. So if you have a better one, suggest it. So for example, and you may be rich because of the method that you.
I have the better one, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Mengenai formasinya kan, saya yakin kita juga secara default tadi udah baca yang tertulis minimal 8 karakter.
Yeah.
Lalu consist of special character 1, and then numeric 1, and then capital character, capital text is 1 ya. Nah, tetapi kalau untuk membedakan untuk masing-masing aplikasi, jadi kita punya dulu yang default tadi, yang sudah kita ramu, misalnya default password kita kan sama semua nih. Oke, berarti kan sama semua, tapi berarti sudah mengikuti matriks yang paling secure tadi lah, nilainya 100 lah gitu kan, strong gitu. Nah, di depannya saya biasanya bikin satu pattern, sir. Dimana kalau di FB, saya ngambil kata FB itu saya patternkan apa misalnya. Ya simpelnya gini lah, FB itu berarti kan 1 dengan 8 gitu kan. Atau 1 dengan 8. Ya kan menyatakan F dan B gitu kan.
Yeah.
Tweet adalah in terms of 7. Apapun yang penting mengingatkan kita kalau ngomong tweet berarti patternnya adalah 7 3 gitu kan. Nah, itu akan mengingatkan kita bahwa yang default kita tetap, lalu kita underscoring untuk menyatukan kita bikin underscore, atau kita langsung gabungkan aja dengan pattern yang tadi. Itu akan jauh berbeda dan orang nggak akan tahu. Tapi yang nggak perlu kita ingat adalah yang default tadi, karena yang default tadi kan udah luar kepala. Ya, lalu nanti kalau kita ingat, apa ya password saya? Oke, default plus apa nih? FB gitu kan. Oh, berarti ini. Default plus apa nih? Google. Oh, berarti ini. Hanya itu aja. Kan orang juga nggak mungkin bisa nebak itu sebenarnya.
Jadi memang ini yang banyak juga dipakai orang, algoritma ya, semacam algoritma jembatan keledai kita untuk mengingat itu tadi gitu ya. Jadi ada satu base sesuatu ya, yang itu yang kita anggap sebagai bagus ya, sudah bagus. Nah, kita tambahkan di depan, di belakang, di tengah atau apapun ya. Oh, di itu tadi itu. Ya, itu yang saran yang bagus dan banyak orang menggunakan itu juga. Ada lagi nggak? Saya itu kebayang kalau misalnya kita punya IoT ya, misalnya memanage berapa sensor di pabrik. Di pabrik kita ada berapa mesin yang di-manage? Ada 7.000 gitu ya. Waduh, kalau passwordnya sama semua, kalau satu kena, bubar jalan semua 7.000-nya gitu ya. Tapi kalau beda-beda, gimana ngingetnya gitu kan ya. Tadi ya, kalau memang ada, biasanya orang menggunakan algoritma tadi untuk passwordnya. Nah, cuma tadi algoritmanya itu base-nya tadi jangan sampai disebutkan, gitu ya. Yaitu jangan sampai diketahui orang lah ya. Ada lagi? Terima kasih atas sarannya. Dan memang saya tanya orang-orang demikian lah ya. Itu jauh lebih aman daripada kalau kita sama ya. Kenapa kalau kita sama menjadi masalah? Kalau misalnya tadi kasus password kita di Bukalapak sama di Shopee sama di Tokopedia sama. begitu Tokopedia-nya bobol, maka Shopee Bukalapak kena juga kan ya, akun kita di Bukalapak gitu. Maka kalau tadi dengan menggunakan algoritma tadi yang di Shopee dan Bukalapak belum tentu kena ya, karena kalau kita dilakukan secara mesin passwordnya beda gitu ya. Jadi beda dengan yang.
Tapi ada juga orang sepelekan itu email ya, Sir ya. Orang lupa kalau males dengan two confirmation factor ya.
Iya.
Itu orang kan jarang tuh pakai ya. Even
Yeah.
3 confirmation factor
Yeah.
ya ribet sekali lah, dua aja
Yeah.
susah gitu kan.
Iya.
Nah, orang suka menomorduakan email, padahal email sendiri harusnya itu di refresh passwordnya.
Yeah.
Karena gini, kalau orang attack akun Tokopedia kita is no problem, asal jangan di attack akun email kita.
Emailnya.
Karena ketika merefer password yang salah atau forgot passwordnya kan ke situ tuh.
Betul.
Nah, kadang-kadang yang di Gmail sendiri nggak tahu nih berapa orang di kelas kita yang menggunakan SMS.
Iya.
Saya Gmail saya kalau udah ada identity yang berhubungan sama duitnya, saya selalu menggunakan two factor.
Iya.
Nah, three factor mungkin belum ada ya. Nah, two factor ini ketika orang mau login aja, saya login aja kudu di SMS-in gitu.
Iya.
Nah, itu. Nah, kayak sekarang nih di email kantor juga kayak Microsoft itu, waduh cuma 3 bulan doang dikasih waktunya tuh passwordnya. 3 bulan kudu ganti.
Iya,
nah, kadang-kadang muter-muternya saya di formasi
3,
yang tadi.
Nah.
Jadi 3-4 itu bolak-balik aja. Tapi
Yeah.
si Microsoft sendiri pintar. Kadang-kadang dia 2 yang sama itu nggak boleh ketemu. Berarti ketemunya ketiganya. Nah, artinya kan kita punya 3 cadangan. Nah, itu cukup. Nah, sama juga kayak email-email kayak kita yang pribadi itu sebenarnya tuh hati-hati banget deh.
Betul.
Nah, karena kan internet hanya menggunakan 2 ya, email dan handphone. Kalau salah satunya itu kena hack, kita harus be careful gitu.
Iya.
Gitu aja sih.
Betul. Nah, ini yang memang kita punya masalah itu ya dengan ini multi-factor authentication nih. Jadi di satu sisi memang untuk mensecurekan, tapi di satu sisi lagi ini memang satu tidak nyaman, 2 kita sering lupa ya untuk multi-factor authentication-nya ini. Tadi disebutkan pakai SMS. Nah, sekarang saya pakainya yang authenticator ya, baik itu Google Authenticator atau yang dari Microsoft Authenticator. Kenapa saya tidak suka SMS? Karena tadi ya, jadi orang datang ke gerai menyamar dengan saya segala macam itu ininya yang di attack itu SMS-nya gitu ya. Jadi kalau two factor-nya itu adalah SMS, maka begitu dia dapat nomor handphone kita, dia bisa dapat SMS-nya. Kalau dia masih harus pakai Google Authenticator atau apa, nomor SMS kita diambil juga, dia nggak punya aplikasi Google Authenticator yang ada di kita gini ya. Jadi masih lebih satu tingkat lebih aman lah gitu ya. Tentu saja dengan catatan saya punya akses ke internet ketika itu ya. Jadi memang ini ya.
Sir pakai yang call kali Sir ya?
Enggak, saya pakai application Google Authenticator.
Kenapa nggak call Sir?
Enggak, karena kalau kadang-kadang kalau call itu for some reason sinyal internet di tempat asalnya, sinyal operator di tempat saya jelek. Jadi kalau saya internetnya lebih kenceng, jadi saya pakai access point ya, operator saya di sini mati gitu. Jadi kalau masih akses selama internet saya jalan. Jadi itu problem saya adalah saya sinyal sering jelek. Jadi kalau SMS atau call itu saya sering gagal. Tungguin nggak datang gitu ya, autentikasinya. Nah, sekarang saya resort ke Google Authenticator atau Microsoft Authenticator. Sehingga ya sama seperti tadi, begitu ada login, saya akan ditanya, coba lihat di Google Authenticator yang angkanya berapa, saya masukkan di situ ya. Jadi saya ya itu tadi 2 factor juga. Nah, sekarang kita 3 factor adalah dengan menggunakan wajah. Nah, ini kan ya, wajah itu 3 factor memang belum lazim. Itulah sebabnya saya mengembangkan di perusahaan saya yang riset AI ini, kita yang kita absensi kelas ini itu adalah faktor yang ketiga gitu ya. Jadi selain tadi user ID, password itu yang what you know, kemudian what you have itu adalah SMS, handphone atau telepon ataupun tadi Google Authenticator. Yang ketiga adalah diri kita sendiri. Nah, biasanya 3 factor itu mahal. 3 factor is expensive, apalagi dengan sidik jari segala macam. Dulu orang nggak mau retina, nggak mau gitu. Tapi dengan adanya sekarang face detection and recognition, it is possible to have a 3 factor authentication cheaper kind of ya, daripada yang dulu ya. Jadi memungkinkan 3 factor, yang mana faktor ketiganya itu adalah dengan menggunakan face. Baik, nah penutup, jadi concluding remarks-nya adalah bahwa kalau kita lihat ya IT di Indonesia itu adopsinya demikian tinggi, tidak bisa kita bendung lagi, tidak bisa. Itu adalah keniscayaan. Kita sudah menggunakan teknologi informasi, sudah menjadikan keniscayaan, dan kita karena sudah terlanjur menggunakan itu nggak bisa mundur lagi. Jadi kalau orang sudah nyobain GoFood, GoPay, Gojek, GoSend segala macam, udah malas lagi ya. Balik lagi ke dunia yang dulu lagi gitu ya. Kalau orang udah terbiasa menggunakan Google Maps, males lagi tuh baca peta yang biasa lagi gitu ya. Udah nggak mungkin lagi orang beli peta kemudian lihat-lihat pakai Google Maps saja ya gitu ya. Demikian pula di payment system, maka akan ada inovasi-inovasi baru lagi. Ya, akan ada inovasi-inovasi baru lagi yang mana tentu saja inovasi baru itu menambahkan juga masalah baru lagi. There's going to be more problems, newer problems. And the problem with that is because Indonesia or Indonesians, we are at the forefront, we are the leaders, the pioneer in this field, we have no person or countries to learn from, except China probably. Jadi kita susahnya kita karena kita leading di sini, maka negaranya yang di depan nih pembayaran segala macam, QR code segala macam itu Indonesia dan China. Negara lain belum lari ke sana, sehingga di satu sisi inovasinya keren, di yang sisi yang kedua kejahatannya juga keren gitu. Jadi kita juga melihat apa yang terjadi di China ya. Jadi kita tarik ulur dengan lihat di China kayak apa gitu. China juga lihat di Indonesia kayak apa gitu ya. Dan negara-negara lain akan melihat kita berdua gitu. Negara lain lihat, oh ternyata di Indonesia sukses, oh ternyata di China sukses, dua-duanya udah sukses. Oke, kita launching juga gitu ya. Jadi Indonesia dan China itu sebagai test bed innovation pemanfaatan teknologi informasi. Nah, menariknya lagi kalau kita nggak duluan, maka kita akan dimanfaatkan oleh negara-negara lain ya. Jadi kita cuma jadi tempat latihan aja, sansaknya. Habis itu kita tidak menguasai ilmunya, tidak mendominasi dari sisi bisnisnya. Ya, jadi kita juga tetap di Indonesia ini harus muncul entrepreneur dan juga profesional yang bisa memanfaatkan teknologi informasi ini, sehingga bukan hanya masalahnya, tapi manfaatnya jauh lebih besar lagi gitu ya. Jadi itulah that's my concluding remarks of this presentation. So, if there's a question or more question.